back, everybody, to the Deposit That podcast. We have 5 special guests here today, and one of them is my co-host, my little son. So you will see him at some point. You'll hear him crying, but anyway, he's welcome. So I want to welcome Mike and Andy to the show. Welcome, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thank you, Joe.
You know, one of the most important things in business, I believe, has always been relationships, right? And I think people forget how valuable they are. And it's also very hard to maintain a relationship through turmoil. And a lot of people in business in general usually get a bad rap for the industry economics and also, you know, the rules and guidelines that put into place. And often people are in between other people regarding certain rules that don't make sense and apply. So for those of you who don't know, back from 2009 and 2012, a lot of appraisal guidelines and rules and requirements were changed to make it harder for lenders and real estate professionals to do business. So the fact that these gentlemen are sitting here today and I've used them exclusively for over 10 years now is something that I know I'm proud about. And I'm also, you know, very honored to have them not only as business service providers, but friends. So what do you guys think about when people come on and they, you know, hire you guys and they automatically say, appraisers stink, appraisers suck, you know, no one's reliable. Oh, we dealt with you. You guys take too long, but they've never dealt with you before. How do you guys handle that?
Good question. Number one, I think times have definitely changed. As you mentioned earlier, 2009 to 2012, it was a new age for lenders to use services like our company. They were used to picking up a phone, talking to an appraiser. They had a relationship with that appraiser. Probably would ask the appraiser, I have this property, 1500 Broad Street. You think I can get 250,000 for it? Yes, okay, go ahead and go appraise the property. And if he couldn't, they'd pick up the phone and talk to the next appraiser to see if they could get him the value. And if they could, they would, you know, go hire that person.
No, not to cut you off. Do you think that there was anything wrong with a bank or a lender or somebody calling up an appraiser and saying, hey, what do you think? Do you think you can make this value or not? In your opinion, from your experience, do you think it was wrong or do you think people abuse that power?
Well, I think you raised a good point, is that I think it was abused. You know, I think there's, as a former loan officer myself, now on this side of the fence, there's that instinct to gather the right information, lead a client to a predictable outcome. So knowing what sales are out there, gauging the property, gauging where that might end up, and being able to determine a proper loan amount, a proper interest rate, those are all good intentions. Where it started to go awry is it kept being pushed and pushed and pushed.
Nothing was ever enough.
Correct. So like Andy was kind of hinting at, you were, you know, people that had incentive for the loan to close, commissioned realtors, commissioned loan officers,
Flippers,
even the mortgage
whatever.
company itself, all have incentive to get a deal done. And so when they find themselves in a situation where numbers are tight and they need that little bit of extra bump, they start making phone calls and applying pressure and driving up numbers where they start to get outside of the realm of reality. And you know, it puts banks in a bad position because now they're lending money on an asset that's not really worth what they thought it was
Inflated
worth.
price.
Correct. And so you get the situation that you have today with a lot of people being upside down, banks taking heavy losses when they have to recoup the property.
Just, you know, upside down means when you owe more than the home is worth,
Correct.
for those of you that never heard the terminology.
Understood. So that's really where the lines got blurred and it went into a very dark gray area. So the industry as a whole looked at that and said, okay, we need to separate those commissioned, incentivized people from being able to apply that level of pressure to an appraiser.
I feel like the industry kind of set your company up, set your position up, set your role up to almost to fail, though. But here's why I say that, right? I know me personally, part of the reason why I couldn't stand the mortgage business, especially in that time frame, I still did it, obviously, like torturing myself, but is even though we were a direct lender, we were a bank, we had to deal with secondary market investors, right? So we would lend our own money, but we need to make sure that we're able to sell the loan. So we weren't the middleman per se, but because banks were having a hard time selling loans in the secondary market, underwriters were so afraid to pull the trigger on a gray area deal that they would have to wait for the secondary market investor to get back to them on their feedback, almost like an attorney opinion letter. So in your guys' cases, you guys are the middleman between the appraiser who's actually valuing the property and the bank that's hiring you as a client, right?
Absolutely.
So how much does that suck truly? Because at the end of the day, if I know I've probably talked to Mike just as much as I've talked to anybody else in the past 10 years, especially during my career, from a reliable standpoint. And that's the reason why I've always dealt with him. That's a tribute to you. You've had a great success in a person, right, which is hard to find as well. But he's reliable. He'd get back to me. And again, we had that working relationship where I knew he would never tell me something just to tell me something. But I've had instances where appraisers have said, Mike, we'll have the appraisal report to you tonight or tomorrow by 8 a.m. I then go tell the seller attorney, the buyer attorney, the bank attorney, the listing agent, the buyer, everyone and their mother, the home insurance company, hey, we're supposed to have the appraisal within 24 hours. We're looking to close in 3 days. And then the appraisal doesn't come in for 2 days. It's a Friday, and now the underwriter can't review till Monday. Now that just screwed up the whole system for 5 days now. So how do you guys feel like you're managing that middleman in an age where the middleman is essentially getting cut out?
Oh, I think one of the most important things with any partnership that you have with one another is to under-promise and over-deliver, okay?
So expectations.
Expectations, absolutely, okay? The number one thing, and when you talk to Haley and Mike, some of the other guests that'll be on today.
Rachel, my girl.
It's important to set everybody up with the right expectations. I mean, from a standpoint, if you're purchasing a home and you're dealing with a realtor and you're dealing with a lender, and it should be the lender and the realtor asking the questions up front of the homeowner and also of the buyer. What are some things that you see in the home that could be fixed before you go out there?
So repairs or stuff that may not pass an inspection report.
Absolutely, because what's the worst thing to do is go out and appraise a
Deal
property,
with the realtor.
and then you
It's the
find
worst thing.
out you have an unpermitted garage, or
Right.
you have here in New York you may have a third unit that's not a legal
Or no
third
certificate
unit.
of occupancy. Whatever.
Correct. That's going to force the appraiser to have to go back out additional time. Additional money is going to have to be spent, and time is money.
Right.
And if you can fix all those type of things and understand them up front, even the littlest of repairs with a railing on steps, whether it's down to the basement, on a porch, or things of that nature, if you shorten up the time, you make everybody happier. If everybody's on board with what those expectations are, then you can better understand and better grasp when that report's going to come in and possibly the range that it should come
So,
in.
it's funny, right? And those are all phenomenal points. I think you hit it on the head where, like, when I first started in 2007, 2008, it was normal for a bank to take 30 to 90 days to close a deal, regardless of the deal type, regardless of stated income, no income, hard money.
It
Hey,
was a different time.
it was a
because
different time.
Everything tightened up. It was a
Quickly,
shift
right?
From
So
super
I was
easy to
like,
super hard.
look, I need to close deals in like 5 to 10 days before Dodd-Frank, obviously, because the longer it takes, the more people get pissed off. So if I could speed up and consolidate this process, and that's why I've always dealt with you guys, because it was 24/7, let's get this done, let's be efficient. By getting the appraisal back, if you remember, the average appraiser was taking 2 weeks at one point, if not more than that, to get a report back because everyone had gotten out of business. Everyone had said there's no deal flow. So at one point, there was a massive shortage of appraisers.
Oh, there's still a massive shortage.
Still today.
So
Yeah.
11 years ago, when I got into starting this business, there was 118,000 appraisers.
Only 2,000 per state, essentially, give or take.
And in some states like Maine, you have 167
For the whole state,
for the whole state.
Correct.
Okay, and even some of those people, while they're
appraisers.
quote unquote appraisers, they appraise livestock, so they're not appraising homes. Okay,
Right.
but the point is that 118, 120,000 people
really
a
not that
decade
much.
ago is now down under 100,000.
So the industry lost.
The average age of an appraiser these days is approaching 60 years.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
You're not seeing any young guys really get in.
you've got an aging demographic and a very steep barrier to entry.
And they're
So-
slow, and technology took over, so now they're having probably a learning curve, do you think?
Well, that happened as well.
Yeah.
There's a lot more sophistication in the automation of the appraisal process. I remember when I first started, before I started this business, back in 2002, you used to write an appraisal report with pencil and paper and take Polaroids and stick it on
Sure.
stick it on the actual
Sure.
report
Yep.
and actually mail it
That was before the iPhone.
to the
Right.
but things have changed, and again, people that are in their 50s and 60s like myself, we're not the most technical of people.
Right.
uh,
I'm 32, and I struggle at times with certain technology.
Sure.
So with more forms coming in, and the analytical piece, which I'm sure one of the other gentlemen will talk about later in the podcast, it's made it harder for people to stay in the industry from the appraisal standpoint. So now you get into areas where there aren't that many appraisers, and you've reduced that population of appraisers, and now starts to drag out the appraisal process once again. And I look at 3-4 years ago, places like Colorado and Washington and Oregon, it wasn't uncommon to take a month to get an appraisal done.
Is
We're
that
not
due-
at that point anymore.
Is that due to, again, not having enough people to service, or is it due to data not being as easily accessible in that area?
No, it's level of volume compared to the amount of people.
So
that
10,000
service.
orders, 1,000 guys servicing, for example,
Correct.
10 to 1
And so
ratio.
What happened is they're cherry picking the easy stuff. Rates are going through the roof. You
Yep.
have to basically pay double, triple, quadruple to get them to take assignments
premium.
that might be a little bit tougher.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So yeah, I mean that happens, and that was a more isolated area. But as the numbers continue to dwindle, we need to bring in fresh blood to keep that going.
Right, and you look at where population in the country is shifting and things of that nature.
Sure.
We had a person that we used to deal with quite a bit in the Philadelphia area. And that person went out to Denver because he saw the opportunity there
Wow.
to be able to make additional money because it was more of a premium, but population is growing greatly out there, and it's nonstop business for him.
So, at what point, because I know you told me recently you scaled your company, you bought a couple other companies, you're looking to acquire more, I'm assuming.
Yes.
At what point did you feel like you had such a good grasp on the business in general where you felt comfortable to not only deploying more capital, doubling, tripling, quadrupling down, because of all the changing guidelines and regulations, obviously? So, like, at what point did you feel like it was a safe move to say, you know what, we've hit our capacity, now it's time to go out and, go vertical?
I think the most important thing is building a foundation for your company and getting to a place where you believe that you have a customer base that feels as though they can come to anybody within your organization. You mentioned earlier Rachel that you deal with, Mike that you've dealt with for over a decade. You feel comfortable going to them with any type of issue and them being able to handle that for you. Okay.
How do you maintain that loyalty, though? Because listen, like anything else, people like to poach, steal, recruit, if you will. How do you personally, as an owner of a company, maintain loyalty where your core people have been there and they're loyal to you and they have your back? Because I believe they truly have your back.
I believe that you treat themselves like you would want to be treated. We empower them to be able to make decisions. We give them the opportunity from the standpoint. Mike is on the sales side. Okay, he can go anywhere, whenever in this country to go find business. Okay, he knows that he has a team behind him that he's developed internally, and then on top of that, he has the company team behind those people as a last line of defense, so to speak, if need be, to utilize those people to help in any way, shape, or form. And I think when you empower people to be able to do what they want, not have to micromanage people, let them come in, do what they want to do. Listen, there's people in my company that happy doing what they want to do every single day, okay? And you need people like that. They're going to come in every day. You can trust what they're going to be able to do. You know that when they pick up the phone and talk to a client, they're going to talk to them in the right way. They're going to be able to help them in whatever facet that they can, okay? And they should be able to answer any question that somebody has. And then there's going to be those people that want to grow and look to develop themselves into different roles within the company. And as an owner in a company, you want to be able to allow those people to continue to grow, give them opportunities, and hopefully everybody in the company is shooting to be in my position one day or another. To go back to your question about, you know, why invest and go and look for different things, we've put ourselves in the marketplace in different parts of the country that we are very strong in. And that's in the Mid-Atlantic, that's in the Northeast, that's in Florida, okay, and in California. And we have 5 offices now in the country: Irvine, California; Overland Park, Kansas; Chaska, Minnesota. Our corporate office is in Gibbsboro, New Jersey, and then we have an office in Greensboro, North Carolina. During the course of the last year, as you mentioned, I went out, purchased 3 other businesses. We tried to diversify ourselves into different geographical areas and to expand our customer base into different types of customers that we service. And that has allowed us to continue to grow our business. And, you know, in less than a year's time, we would have doubled what we do from a production standpoint, but also diversify ourselves in the products that we're offering for our clients and our expertise geographically around the country. Florida used to be our #1 state in terms of doing business. Approximately 22,000 appraisals that we would do a
Wow,
year.
it's a big number.
And now the #1 state that we service is Minnesota, and we'll probably end up doing about 24,000 transactions there this year.
Interesting.
So again, trying to look at how we can better offer our clients like yourself.
Hold on, TV timeout. All right, so we're back for that crying interruption. So he's going to sit here and have his bottle. So back to scaling the company. You felt like you had the core people, you expanded, you picked your states, you obviously stuck to what you know. Now, the biggest concern in the industry in general in real estate is technology going to replace people? Do you believe that technology is going to replace a lot of your staff at some point?
No.
Why is that?
So before I got into this industry, I was in banking, but on the operational side. I actually ran one of the largest check processing sites in the country.
Oh, wow.
Okay, bigger than a Federal Reserve.
Wow.
And I still remember one of the first days I was at the bank, and one of the people who was training me said to me, "This check processing that we're doing now, it's going to go away in a few years. It's going to be replaced by image processing." And during my days in banking, yes, I was involved in image processing. There's more checks now than 35 years later
Wow, really?
than there was when I started.
More people.
Yeah, more people, but there, and look, image processing took, you know, some of the things. You can go sit there and deposit mobilely on your phone.
Deposit that.
Deposit that, exactly. Okay, and there's going to be automation that's going to help facilitate the overall appraisal process and things of that nature. And there's some type of alternative valuation products that are now coming into, you know, the realm of possibilities that people can utilize to help, you know, in getting their loans done and things of that nature. And it'll probably take some time for that to be adapted throughout the course of mainstream America in terms of mortgage processing and things of that nature. But we were just talking yesterday, some of the leaders within our organization, about what we want to do in terms of being able to bring deliverables to the process to make it better from an automated process. And that is, you know, wouldn't it be great to have a mobile app that's set up with all of our appraisers across the country?
Sure.
That knows that, hey, Jeff, you're sitting in Manhattan right now on Broadway, and I got a person that needs to have their home appraised right now. You want to take care of that right now
Like
while you're
Uber for appraisals.
Yeah, kind of. Yeah.
That'd be interesting to bring that to the market. Now, what hurdles do you have as far as compliance go moving forward, do you believe? Or do you think the compliance days are essentially behind us or stagnant at this point?
Oh, no, compliance is the #1 thing in the appraisal industry.
Nightmare, right? Still
It
nightmare.
keeps growing, and that's allowed us to have the opportunity to be able to look at other organizations that we've kind of brought into the, our organization, so to speak, from the standpoint of acquisition. And that is that the more compliance that's out there, the more states are enacting various laws and things of that nature, the more cost that you have to put into it to back federally, transactions and things
Sure.
of that nature. It just pushes the little guys out of business. They can't compete because all they're doing all day is compliance. They're not doing anything to help develop the next level of automation, as you mentioned.
That's what kind of mortgage banking is today, in my
Right.
opinion.
So, from that standpoint, compliance is the number one thing. And, we take that very seriously, and our organization actually is and was the first organization in the entire country to be licensed. Back in 2009, New Mexico was the first of the 50 states to pass AMC legislation, and we're your license number 001.
Wow.
And in fact, August 9th was the deadline for all the states to, here we are 10 years later, and there were still 3 states that came right up to the line, as well as the District of Columbia. It was New Jersey, Massachusetts, and the District of Columbia that came right down to the last week in order to pass legislation to get that approved. So we don't know who was the first to be enacted in all 50 states licensed, but I can tell you our company was one of 8 that was licensed by August 9th in all 50 states in the District of Columbia. And again, every day, another state's passing another law in terms of what they require in regards to compliance
Just staying up
and
to date with the
fees
trends
and things of that nature.
paying the balls.
No, it is.
Right.
It is.
Yeah.
And it's just going to get more and more and more. And
So do you see yourself being positioned to, in a downturn, acquire more
absolutely.
valuable companies, if you will, or companies in different markets that you see an opportunity in?
Absolutely. And it doesn't have to just be from the appraisal standpoint. And our last acquisition, company that's based out of North Carolina, while they do appraisal work and they are an AMC, their primary clients were title companies that were looking for them to provide surveys that they couldn't get
Wow.
through their normal title means.
Wow.
So to be able to, dive into that, they do a lot of commercial, where prior to this, we were only probably 5% commercial business across the country. Allows us to take on different opportunities, and again, with that, you draw in more customers that maybe you wouldn't have dealt with previously.
So, Mike, based on your experience, do you think I have people that, I usually ask you the questions, so people ask me questions, and I ask you and Rachel on a group text, right? And you guys always get back to me right away, which is awesome. You guys are more than helpful, even on the favor side, obviously. Should somebody who inherits a property, or should somebody who is thinking about selling a property get a private appraisal before speaking to a realtor, in your opinion? Or is it almost like, why do that?
I see that very often. I have a neighbor of mine, good friend, the older gentleman. He's selling his home, moving to Texas, and he had spoken with a realtor who told him, house is worth $460. And for a minute, he believed that, but he knows me, he knows what an industry I'm in, and he had reached out. And I'm like, that sounds low, let me get back to you. And I had pulled some data in the area because we have those resources, went through everything, put together a little 3-page report for him. Turns out he could sell the house tomorrow for $525. And
Big difference.
correct. So, you never know somebody else's motivations. Maybe the realtor wanted to buy it himself, or maybe he knew an investor or whatever. But a lot of people that don't have a friend like me or a friend like you that's in the industry that knows
That's
the
trustworthy.
real deal, correct.
Or honorable.
Getting an appraisal is that way to kind of know that you're getting an unbiased opinion. You're the one who hired that person. You're the one who's paying that person. And you're the one that's saying, hey, I need to know what my house is worth. And they're going to give you that. And they have no outside incentive to give you anything but the truth.
Now, people often mix up the definition of an appraisal, right? So it's like, this house is worth $670. Well, it's not, because an appraisal is defined, to to my knowledge, as an opinion of value. So when somebody comes to you and says, hey, you underappraised this, or hey, you overappraised this, what's usually your rebuttal other than providing, supporting documentation? How do you get between that gray area of, hey, I think it's worth 550, hey, I think it's worth 570?
Well, I think the person coming back to you is probably going to come back to you saying they underappraised your house versus
More often than not,
overappraised it.
yeah.
Exactly. And that's what we always say. Okay, the house came in at 550. You think it's worth 575 or 580. Well, why? Show me the evidence that supports that finding. Because people think, oh, a house sold in my development for this, my house has to be worth that. Okay? I live in a development that has 29 homes. Okay? Some of those homes back up to water. Some back up to an apartment complex
Right.
outside of that.
Right.
Okay? The two houses as you enter into the development are on a double yellow line street. Okay? They all have.
So there's valuation differences between what your house backs up
100%.
against, whether on a street. Your average person listening probably doesn't know that.
Oh, absolutely, they don't know.
So there are value conflicts, if you will,
Okay,
based on all that stuff.
and unless you live in a townhome community where pretty much every home is the same, and even in that case, if you're in the middle of a cluster of 4 homes, okay, if you're in the middle versus the guy that's on the exterior,
Yeah. On the end,
semi-attached,
yeah.
There's a difference there. Could be
There's-
$2,000-$3,000.
There's
Minimal, though. You're not
But
talking
people think that, well, if my neighbor sold for 600, then
You sell for
I
more.
should be 600.
or 605.
Right. So, and realtors think that way as well.
Yeah.
Okay. And I just had one this past week where person, I believe they were looking for a sales price of $590. The home came in at $550, and they wanted to know why they couldn't get $590. And the first sale that the appraiser used was the exact same home in terms of square footage, bed and bath count, was actually on the same street. Okay, that home sold for $570. Okay,
And they're wondering why that was.
and yes, they backed up the water, and these people didn't back up the water. The subject had an enclosed patio, but the sale that was utilized that was higher
Sure.
had a patio that was 3 times the size. And obviously looking out on the water versus looking at somebody else's house behind them plays a big part of it. And then another sale sold for $585, so they argued, well, my house is just like that house. And I said,
Not
no,
really.
your house isn't just like that house, because if you look at your kitchen and you look at your bathroom, they're 30 years old. You can see from the tiling, you can see from the cabinetry and things of that nature. And you go look at these, this particular home online, it's granite countertops in the bathrooms, marble tile in the
Sure.
bathroom.
Sure.
Substantial upgrades. You're not going to get dollar for dollar on what you paid for it, but you have to say that a house that sold for $585,000 and it's the same square footage and it's in the same development and it backs up to the same thing has to be worth more if it's not built in condition when
You
you
would think
came
so.
in 30 years ago.
Right.
So there was the argument right there. And then they went back to their real estate agent. The real estate agent came back with a couple of what they thought were comparable sales. And the problem is they're not sales, they're listings. Okay.
Yeah, just because you list the
And-
price, you list at $2 million. doesn't
Right,
mean
I
it's
can
worth
list
it.
my house for 10 million.
Yeah,
It doesn't mean that
right.
somebody's gonna buy it.
Someone
So-
might.
So until somebody buys that, that'll be the next driving factor. That's
Right.
the most recent sale in the development. Then you can go back out, you can reappraise the house, because when you appraise the house for the first time, it's the effective date. It's those sales that were available
Sure.
at the time I inspected your house develops your value.
So let me ask you this question, and we're not obviously at this point of the market, but I think it's important to touch on, since we just went through the past 5 to 7 years of this, people front-running value. So, hey, I bought this house, this condo today in Williamsburg, Brooklyn for $500,000. Now there's another one for $525, $550, $575. How do people typically purchase properties, right, where supply and demand comes in, and people are buying properties higher than the current valuation, and they're basically paying over ask or getting into bidding wars. How do you guys handle that when you know for a fact someone's overpaying for the property and the appraised value doesn't come in?
I think we've seen that a lot in a lot of markets, not so much necessarily today, but
Years ago.
Yeah, as things expand and the economy's hot and some markets appreciate quickly. I remember Vegas got really hurt through the 07-08 crash, and
Right.
things went really bottomed out,
Yep.
and then there was this resurgence. And the problem a lot of appraisers have, because a house might be worth what they're buying it for, but backing it up with the sales, to your point, it becomes the challenge. So that house a week ago would have sold for 500. Now it's going in for 525. There's this rapid appreciation in the area, and a lot of times the buyers have to come to the table with that cash.
Right.
You know, appraisers can use time adjustments to some degree,
But not a week.
but the problem is that the lenders now, their hands are tied, because just as you talked about a while ago, that loan is only as good as its ability to be sold
Sure.
to secondary
And you have to
market.
bracket the value and
Correct.
everything.
So even if the lender can look at that and say, yep, this is a very high rate of appreciation, we have a time adjustment, this house is selling for 525, even though no other house is sold for more than 500, it all might make sense, but it's not gonna work on paper. And so a lot of the time, it's those cash buyers that are coming in and continue to push the market. You're kind of chasing your tail.
Sure.
But those are really isolated areas where it's more of a runaway train.
And right now it's few and far between.
And
yes,
yeah,
so-
that's not the case at the moment, but I mean, a few years ago, we did see it, and, you know, I could always judge what's going on by the phone calls I get,
Right.
and that was,
Right.
for a period of time, that was the
Mike, we
phone call I got.
underappraised. Mike, we
Correct,
underappraised.
and every time you look at it, you
How many
see.
times have you heard that?
Yeah, and when you're already using the highest sales, where do you go? So
Interesting.
at periods of time, that does happen, and it's tough, because the appraisers are bound by what they can prove, and the lenders are bound by what they can prove.
And sell.
And so now it becomes speculation as to, okay, well, there is this rapid appreciation, but how do I back it up? And
Interesting.
so, but.
So I know you two gentlemen brought two other gentlemen here today.
Mhm.
You want to
Yes.
give a little intro of who they are, what their experience is, and what we can expect from them
Sure.
as
Sure.
far as information goes?
Sure. So joining us shortly will be Haley Freeman. Haley is our Chief Valuation Officer.
What does that entail?
I'll let him tell you what that is. I don't want to speak for him.
Do you know, or he knows only? You just gave him the fancy
He tells
title.
me. But,
CVO.
Haley is a certified appraiser out of California and has been in the industry for 40 years.
40.
40.
He looks like he's 42. How the hell did that happen?
We started young.
California.
California. CBD.
Yeah.
Also with us today is Mike Moore. Mike is our Director of Sales and Marketing for Nationwide Property and Appraisal Services. Mike comes to us from Nashville, Tennessee.
Wow.
Mike's been in the industry for 2 decades now. He's kind of running the pilot programs for us right now in terms of alternative valuation. And we talked earlier today about, what are going to be some of the changes and how we look to, conquer those going forward.
Automation and technology.
Yes. Okay, and, trying to shorten the time period it takes to appraise a house from when we get the order to when it's delivered to the lender. And, there's some things that are out there today that we are doing for some of our lenders to do that. And, it's probably going to be the way of the future, whether it's, next year or 10 years from now. Just like imaging was in
Sure.
terms of check processing, it's going to be a form of valuation, how well it's received in the industry, and how it's backed by the states. There's already some pushback by some states in the country that they don't believe that that's
Well, they're
the
probably
proper
75
form
years
of
old and above
valuation.
that don't understand it.
So, but I'll let Mike talk about that specifically when he joins us.
So you guys looking to take on new clients as well, as far as mortgage companies, banks, and everything? You guys are actively searching
Absolutely.
to grow.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we've in the past year have gone from performing 100,000 appraisals a year to now we're on pace to do about 225,000 appraisals this year.
Big jump. I just got chills. That's a big jump.
Oh, it's a huge
Oh
jump.
man.
Okay.
Mike's still maintaining his hair though. What's the secret? I don't understand. Double the business usually means like double the hair loss.
But no, I mean, there's always people that we can help and new clients that, we'd love to be able to assist in what their needs are, no matter, how small or how large they are. Again, it's when you're a company this size, okay, it's more about developing the relationships and the partnerships with people than it is about, I need, X amount of orders
Yep,
to stay in business and things of that nature. Where, we've always developed and grown our business in developing the relationships and partnerships with people that we come in, touch with. And, Jeff, you're a part of that, as you mentioned.
I appreciate that.
We've
Sure.
been partners in this for over a decade now.
It's crazy to think about it. Think about it.
Oh, I know,
like
and
this.
we've developed a great friendship
Yeah.
over the course of that.
Well, you and I
time.
didn't start off too hot, if you remember. Right? There's some times that Mike had to throw on the referee shirt, and I'm like, listen, you better keep him out of North Jersey because if he comes up here, he's not going to get out. He's going to be swimming in the Hudson River. And you're probably like, if he comes out to Philly, then we're going to take him into the real Philly, and he's never going to come back to Jersey. So
So I guess that's just me, because Haley will talk about that as well. Haley used to be before Haley was part of our family.
Yeah.
I used to work with Haley at a couple different lenders that he was at, and just like when we first touched base, it wasn't the smoothest thing. From when we first got started. Obviously, you had a relationship with Mike, and
Sure.
Haley had a relationship with other people within our organization, and we didn't hit it off too well at the beginning. And here we are 6-7 years later.
friends.
And
We actually, you and I actually just met, if you don't remember, a couple
oh, I
months
know,
ago.
I know. So,
9 years of emailing, hate
yeah,
back and forth.
again, look,
Emotion flying high.
I always say, look, you can't please everybody.
Right.
Okay, I love to please everybody, but you can't. Okay, this is a human business.
Yep.
Okay, and there's people that are going to interact very well, whether it's via email, whether it's over the phone, whether it's face to face on
FaceTime, Skype,
FaceTime or
yeah.
what have you. And here we are,
Yep.
a decade knowing and doing business with each other. And
And we just met.
I just met you a month ago.
There's something to say about that. So I think real business people are always able, after the dust settles, to put the crap, bullshit, emotions aside, shake hands like gentlemen if both people are aligned in where they're looking to go, right? Like, I never didn't like you as a person. We just had conflicts over me wanting speed. You probably dealing with thousands of other frustrated individuals, and emotions got hot, but we never took it to that point where there was a point of no return. And obviously, Mike was instrumental in keeping us married, if you will. But
Right.
there's something to be spoken about, your service and
Yeah.
our loyalty.
And again, that's part of having a family that, right now extends over 100 people within
Yeah.
my organization. There's people that are going to get along with one another like that. And then there's people that, look, no matter what I say, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Well, I got to find the right person to deal with each person that we have
Sure.
a relationship with, that they have a go-to person within our organization that they trust and love,
Yep.
okay,
It's
and feel
invaluable.
as though they're the best thing since sliced bread, okay? And that's part of my role, is to find that person in my organization to help you along with whatever struggles you may have, both for yourself and
Sure.
for your clients.
Interesting.
Yeah, and I think one of the main reasons we've been so successful over the past 10 years is being able to, everybody's great when everything's going great. It's when there's a problem and emotions get hot and situations get complex. We've been very good at being proactive about that. Sometimes we win, sometimes we lose, but at the very least, we've thrown all our cards on the table
Sure.
and done our best job.
And you care.
Correct. And so, that the guys like yourself have picked up on that, and I think that's what's gotten us here. And so, when times get tough, it's whether or not you can respond and jump on it and deal with those problems. Because, like I said, everyone's great when everything goes smooth, but when things get hairy, it's the guys that can step up and fix the problems.
So because today we obviously have two sets of guests on one show, which is awesome, we usually leave the listeners with one thing to deposit. So deposit, that really means, what's your number one advice for today for a listener to deposit to their brain that they can either implement psychologically or directly implement into your business? I think you just gave one, right?
Mhm.
Like, when tough times come, you have to deliver and execute and hunker down and not
Mhm.
disappear. So Andy, what would your number one piece of advice to deposit today into someone's brain is, from a business standpoint or a personal standpoint?
I'll kind of talk on two things, if you don't mind.
Yeah, all the time in the world.
One about your house. Know your house inside and out, okay? Know what the situations are, that if you were to go sell your house today, what would need to be repaired, okay? Because you want to take care of those type of things before you go and list the property, okay? It might cause you to invest $5,000 to fix some things up that if you didn't, when you go and have your home valued, you'd probably lose $25,000. So it's worth that investment to do those little things, the littlest things as possible. Okay, remember, you're not getting dollar for dollar back, so
Sure.
it's not like, go build a pool in your backyard for 15,000.
Right.
You're going to get that when
When
you
it backs
sell
up against water.
sell the property.
Yeah.
The important thing, I think, in business, okay, is being able to entrust the people that you work with, okay?
Is that entrusting them blindly or making them earn that trust?
I think you have to allow people to bring what they can to the table, okay? And you have to be open to the fact that you don't know everything. I always thought I knew everything.
Until
Okay.
30, and then you're like, no, nothing.
Till 30. But again, there's a reason why I have 100 plus people in my organization, okay? That is because I can't do everything. No matter
Awesome.
how
That's
much I would
impossible.
want to do everything, I can't do everything. And as I mentioned earlier, there's people that I may not hit it off with the first time I meet them or the first time I interact with them. And I have to be smart enough to be able to move that person to someone in my organization that's going to want to make them feel like I can come here time and time again.
Yep.
I'm going to be treated like a human being. I'm going to be respected as an individual. And when I have a situation, you're going to listen to what I have to say, and you're going to find a way to solve my problem. Okay, as Mike mentioned, we're going to do everything in our power
Sure.
to get a deal done for you. Okay, and if we have to go out and get some supporting information that costs us money to do to back up maybe what an appraiser has already developed for you in terms of evaluation, we're going to do that. We're going to go out and we're going to look at other people's opinions and ask of them what they may see.
So go the extra
Okay.
yard.
And we'll go the extra yard, and we're not going to go and say, "Hey Jeff, hey, I need $100 for
Right.
to go do that," because that's not what it's about.
Right. It's about the
Okay,
bigger
it's
picture.
about being part of the family, being part of the relationship, and I would want to do that for anybody in my family, to the point where, hey, look, we've tried every possible option for you, okay, and thrown resources at it, and look, sometimes you don't win. And you got to accept that. You
Take
got
the
to
loss and move
accept
on.
that,
Yep.
hey, I've done everything humanly possible
Yep.
to help you get to the finish
Yeah.
line.
And I think knowing that confidently in a service provider is invaluable. And I can tell you that of the 1,000+ deals that I've closed, probably 20% of my deals we had to work closely on, call in favors for either speed, getting it done quicker, where our clients had to pay expedited fees, or hey, look, Bank of America underappraised this property, in my opinion, by $30,000-$40,000. Here's the deal. Here's the contract. Look, I believe this appraisal is not right, and you guys actually went to bat, and we brought the deal in and closed it. So I can't thank you guys enough for not only making my career more successful, but really, guys, having you guys be my backstop. And I think any loan officer or mortgage bank listening to this, if you don't have a good appraisal management company and you don't have a relationship with them, get one, reach out to these guys and really, form a relationship, because at the end of the day, someone that you've known for 10 years, in my opinion, is going to go to bat for you more often, more likely than somebody you just met off the street that's telling you how great they are. So I truly appreciate you guys, friendship, business-wise, service provider-wise, and look forward to another, 10, 20 years of doing more business.
Thank you very much.
Now we're going to TV timeout, and we'll have the two smarter gentlemen, not better looking, smarter, come on over and talk. So welcome back for halftime. We had to give my son an empty bottle to pretend like he was drinking, but thank you guys for coming out. I know you came from California and Tennessee, so we appreciate you guys having you out here in the Big Apple. So start off by telling us really what you see as far as people making the biggest mistakes, whether it's a consumer, homeowner, or a realtor when, giving you an estimated valuation of the property.
Well, interestingly enough, most homeowners think their houses are worth more than they tend to be. So realtors, when they go out and try and price a house, will lots of times have to base it on the realtor's, based on the borrower's opinion of value. The problem is, as you guys talked about a little bit earlier, is you have to have sales in the market that will support that. So when borrowers typically think their houses are worth, let's say, $100,000, and the average home is selling at 80, we have a pool. The pool's not worth much. Unfortunately, you lose that value gain, and you end up at $82,000 or something close to that. If there's no sale in the neighborhood to support that, we have a problem. The secondary market scores all appraisals from a technical standpoint. So when it's uploaded and delivered to the lender, or when the lender uploads it to Fannie, it gets risk score. When the risk score is higher than 2.5, the lender is required to due diligence reviews on these. Lots of times that indicates the value is not supported by the data that the agencies have stripped off appraisals over several years. So there's multiple issues when your house is priced higher than the neighborhood.
So back to what you're saying as far as consumers knowing the market, how do you make that more of an education to a consumer? Because your average consumer is always going to want more. It's human nature for anything compared to what reality is. What's been your experience in proving that?
Interestingly enough, a lot of borrowers now are somewhat tech savvy and will go on to websites like Zillow,
Hate Zillow.
Redfin, and Redfin's actually not bad. Zillow, what they do have is a lot of sales data on there.
Right.
Don't get stuck in the value they give you, because it's
Can you say that one more time?
don't get stuck
trust
on
the
the
Zestimate.
Zestimate, as they call it.
So I wrote a book called The Mortgage Playbook for Millennials. I have a whole chapter dedicated to fuck Zillow. It literally says fuck Zillow, right? And I made shirts, tank tops that said fuck Zillow. Now, I also bought Zillow stock the first day it became available on the stock exchange. I thought, based on their original business plan, it would really help the industry. But it just proved to not help the industry and actually hurt business and transactions.
Well, there almost needs to be a disclaimer about it, right? It's like,
And there was none for a long time.
Yeah.
no, yeah, and people love having all this data, but the fact is that they don't know what to do with it. And especially when, like, you pull up the page and there's this big giant number, and that's supposed to be the number that you trust and rely upon. But the fact is, you got to dig into the data a lot of times.
We don't know we don't know their algorithm to support this number. An appraisal has to be based on factual data
In a certain time frame as well, right?
within a certain time frame.
Can't say I bought the house in 1980. It's worth, it's irrelevant what you
Yeah,
bought
unless
it
that was
for.
the last sale.
Right, yeah.
Right.
And even then.
Right, yeah.
And as we know, Zillow likes to have their
Sure.
graphs and diagrams and
Yep.
information.
So being in the business 40 years, I mean, you kind of rewrote the rules again, but I'm assuming you started off when you were writing the rules the first time. So how have you adjusted to the game changing? It's almost like what was pass interference is no longer pass interference. And then there's a new rule that comes in that you can't touch the quarterback. So how do you personally adapt to that?
It's all about change.
Are you comfortable with change?
You have to be if you're going to survive in this industry, any part of this industry, because it's evolving constantly. When I started out, as example, appraisals were done on a 3x5 card. There was no license. There was no exhibits,
Like a 3x5 index card.
like an index card, cut into fours.
And write down whatever your lucky numbers are.
Basically, yeah, was pretty basic.
Wow.
Then regulations really didn't come into play until 1992. Well, in late 80s, early 90s, after the Save as a Loan collapse.
In '88, I think that was right.
Yeah. And so that's when licensing first came in. I remember when Fannie came out with the first appraisal form, the 1004
Sure,
form.
sure.
They're now they're working on their third version, but the second version is the current version we all see. As Andy said earlier, we went to Polaroid photos. First they were black and white, then color, stapled onto the report. 33 millimeters involved. We run out, do the appraisal, drop off the film at the 1 hour photo mat, and come back, tape them on, and mail the reports
Crazy.
out when they're typed.
How long did it take to do appraisals back then?
In some ways it was faster, some ways it was
So less Big Brother, but less technology.
a lot less rules. Yeah, we would have to get our comp data individually. It would be a lot more expensive from different sources. Now, of course, we all belong to MLS.
Yeah.
We use the same information realtors use, which is the way it should be.
Everyone's got
never-
access to everything.
They were never scrutinized to the level that they are today as well, right? I mean,
Not even.
not
no.
even close.
Well, is that because most of the time there were real no losses incurred by the lender? So, look, I look at it as no one cares about anything until someone loses money or gets hurt, right? So, because the market really was, shaking stagnantly, going up, pulsating, staking stagnantly, keep going up, and rates were going from 18 to 15 to 14 to 12 to 9 to 8 in a day, right? Those swings were so massive that people really weren't holding the loans long enough, in my opinion, in order to have losses 6, 7, 8, 9 years down the road until we experienced those losses. And now people are like, appraiser's fault,
Right.
right?
We always laugh how good it is when things are going up.
Right. Like Mike said earlier.
Yeah,
It's easy.
and how bad it is when not. you know.
Interesting. So, how do you gentlemen work together?
Well, I mean, very closely, right? So I'm the director of sales, so my sales team works with Haley frequently when they have valuation questions that come from their clients. But Haley and I specifically have been partnering up on really kind of changing the game with our alternative valuation products. And they gave a little bit of a lead into that earlier, and I'll try to give a little bit of a summary as far as what's happening in the industry there. So what it really boils down to is, like, yes, there's data everywhere, and everybody wants to use this data. But there's also efficiencies that we're seeing, kind of like what Andy was talking about with having the right people in the right place.
Mm-hmm.
So what people are seeing is that appraisers are best at appraising properties, giving their opinion of value. Do you necessarily need them out there inspecting and measuring a house? No, not really. Somebody else can take those pictures. Somebody else can measure the property. They can do those things. So you put the appraiser at their desk working on the valuation primarily. So
And having
that's-
like a runner go in, hey, 8 by 8
Yeah.
or whatever.
Well,
Yeah, here's some
well,
pictures.
so that's what used to happen with trainees, right?
Right.
Like,
But there's no more trainees.
Well,
Well,
they're harder to
Limited.
use for sure. So with the alternative valuation space, there's a market now to where you can use a licensed inspector or an insurance inspector or in some case a real estate agent, someone to go out and do that inspection. They can hand that inspection report to an appraiser by data, not physically, electronically.
Sure.
And then the appraiser just works on valuing the property. So
So
you
it
get
speeds
those-
things up very quickly, it sounds like.
should, yeah.
It should, at least.
Um,
Integrity of data, though, obviously.
Yeah,
Correct.
yeah, and of course, the states, some of them are a little less comfortable with that.
Right.
Some are just
Right.
trying to protect appraisers.
Definition of the expert,
Yeah,
and who, if the appraisers,
Is he
What-
actually
what-
doing the work, or is he
what's
just
the
signing off on it?
what's the act of the
Right,
appraisal or the
right.
process?
Well, I mean, remember to make the correlation into banking, and where
Mhm.
I've only known since I was 20 in 2007, is the old story was, hey, the underwriter was just told by the mortgage bank CEO president, sign off on this loan, don't look at it. And then when, all the indemnifications came back, which you remember from FHA and HUD and everybody, the underwriter was like, well, he just told me to sign it. But then, but wait, so you're admitting you signed it and didn't look at it?
Mhm.
But then that puts the person in the desperation position of, if I don't do this, I might not have a job.
Yeah.
If I do this, the owner is responsible, not me. But people forgot that like their name was on the document, right? So I'm sure since you've been around 40 years, you've been offered bribes. I'm sure your guys have been offered bribes. I'm sure many people have called up and said, hey, I need this valuation.
and he clearly hasn't
So-
taken any because
Yeah. You sleep like a baby at night. But listen, that's unfortunately the desperation of the nature of the industries we're reciprocally in. How do you prevent the desperation from controlling the outcome? Because I know appraisers personally, when I first started in 07, 08, they were like, look, I'll get you whatever value you need. Just I need the work, I need the work, I need the work. And I'm like, no, you know, like I only have a couple deals and you're not getting them. And if you lead with that, I don't even want to deal with you. So how do you prevent that?
There's different ways. Like I said earlier, the agencies run their appraisals through
Yeah,
a
system.
that'll also score them. We review all of our appraisals to make sure that at least the value that's included is supported by the data.
Right.
And for QC purposes based on our clients' needs. So we have multiple ways to look at reports. Sometimes it comes back from the lender if it's not an obvious situation, and sometimes it's caught later, unfortunately, because some people do scrupulous things that you just don't find out till later in the loan process. But our job, we review every report for quality and consistency to meet the lender requirements. So most of that is found up front.
Yeah, and I think what a lot of people unfortunately misunderstand about quality control is like it's there not only to protect you as the loan officer and the loan and everything else,
Sure.
but we're trying to do that on the front end while we've got the appraiser engaged, right? Because a lot of times we send in the report, it doesn't go through underwriting for another week, and then the appraiser's already moved on. Right?
Forgot about
Or
all
on
about
vacation.
it. Yeah.
That's
Serious.
no problem.
Yeah, so to get that change done at that point in the game
nuts.
takes a lot
Yeah,
longer.
it's nuts. It's like, what time did you wake up 2 Tuesdays ago? It's like,
Right.
what? I don't remember.
Yeah.
But you know what's interesting? So I feel like from a scalability standpoint, people can really get in the industry right now because there's an opening as far as the age gap goes, right? So what is your guys' proactive approach to bringing in younger trainees, right, to really get them to understand the business and scale the younger generations? And you could be that mentor to somebody.
Well, we have to try to champion that concept first of all,
Right.
because as Haley mentioned earlier, there's not a lot of lenders who allow trainees to be used.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and Mike mentioned earlier as well that the bar has been consistently raised as far as the education requirements to get in there,
Sure.
the number of hours of experience you need to get into there.
Which I agree with.
To be a certified appraiser,
Hmm.
you basically have to put in the same amount of time as it would be to be a lawyer
Gotcha.
to get a JD.
Years.
So like bachelor's degree, 3 years. Practice.
Yeah, and the tickets are much smaller on the appraiser side
Yeah,
than it is, and more work than
Oh, yeah, for
billing
Student
five.
loans might be less. But
Yeah, right. Yeah, you're right.
they made it hard, but they've eased it up some
Mhm.
this last year for the lower level license. But still, it's a work in progress. Like everything, they pass a law, then when things aren't working the way they want, they kind of go extreme, which they did with educational requirements a few years ago. And now they're kind of backing off a little bit. Other barrier is it used to be any certified appraiser could hire 3, 4, 5 trainees. They changed the rules to where you can only have 2, and they have to be basically registered under you.
So you're responsible for them.
You are anyways.
Yeah.
Anytime you sign as a certified appraiser on a trainee, you're responsible for everything in the report. However, this takes an extra step.
Right.
So
What do you do in the event where, I'll give an example, like North Jersey right now, right? People are like, oh, my house is worth $2.9 million, and you wind up selling it for $1.8 million, let's just say, right? Now, the house next door, they're like, look, the house was a fire sale at 1.8. Like, the people just went through a divorce. They wanted to get out, right? It's really worth 2.2, or it's really worth 2.4. Like, you know for a fact it was undersold. How do you, as an appraiser, look at that and justify bringing a deal in 15 to 20% higher based on the current comp that supports 1.8? How do you do that?
one comp doesn't make a market.
Right.
However, if there's 2 or 3 other houses in that price range,
Sure.
that's the market.
Right.
So that's what we have to.
So you
look at.
definitely do bracket it, and you definitely give your professional opinion on, look, there's no way this 1.8 was realistic. It was clearly below market, it sold
Well,
off
that's where it
market.
comes down to
Yeah.
being an arm's length or non-arm's
Yeah,
length.
you have 5
Transaction.
sales at a higher amount and
Right.
one at a low amount. They've all sold within 6 months.
Now, how
It's-
much weight do you put on? I know I'm a local guy, meaning like I believe real estate and lending is local, right? Now, look, anyone can buck my trend to rule, exception to the rule where like, yeah, you get a mortgage, you qualify, you don't. But I had one person call me up one time. I think it was a Bank of America loan officer, a knucklehead in like 2011, and I wound up saving $1 million deal in Harlem. The lady from Bank of America was in like Minnesota. Her appraiser was from like, I'm giving it Canada,
Yeah.
they're from America. You know what she said to me? There's no way there's a property in Harlem, New York worth $1 million. I go, well, clearly you haven't been to Harlem in the past 30 years
Right.
because here's a comp for $2 million.
Right.
How much weight do you put on a local expert appraiser or valuationist?
They should be local.
Should be.
And
With
they're,
it, what's
they're
local?
required to be geocompetent. So geographically
I get you.
competent.
Yeah, I get you.
Access to the data that the local market would, the local realtors, the local market has. They have to know the markets. And if they don't, they have to get the competency to do it before they accept the assignment.
Yeah.
So they also have, we assign the closest appraiser we could find. Basically quality and distance is
Mhm.
is our.
That's your model.
Yeah, but the market factors we talked about earlier, right? With fewer appraisers being available than ever before,
Right.
with people wanting faster and cheaper, and some AMCs, unfortunately, they will sacrifice integrity and quality over that. They'll
Got to
do
close
exact-
deals
Yeah, got to get it done.
They'll just broadcast orders out to all the appraisers.
and see who bites first.
And fastest, cheapest.
But this is where, again, when I go to the alternative valuation products out there, as appraisers start to see these new products out
Mhm.
there and this new methodology of how to structure their business,
Mhm.
like you can do so much more work locally and never get up off the couch or out of your desk,
Sure.
right? And I
Rather than
think-
taking on deals somewhere far away.
Yeah, exactly. And who wants to go out, drive, and take pictures of comps?
No one.
Or revision, like every time there's a revision, like get up off the, so for that reason, I think initially you're seeing probably more of that where people are appraising properties from further away. But I think as the people embrace these new products, it's going to kind of fix that issue for us.
Where do you see the biggest hurdle right now in today's current economic environment from an appraisal standpoint?
I think it's with the rising values.
You do,
Right, yeah.
still.
Well,
It-
because it's a backwards looking process, right? So again, I think Mike and Andy touched on this earlier.
What was
is
it
that-
worth 2 weeks ago?
Yeah,
Basically, yeah,
well,
the last
and
sale.
Right.
the last sale is always looking in the past. You can't talk about what's in the future. You can make upward adjustments, but those get very heavily scrutinized by underwriters.
I'm
You have to be
sure.
able to support 'em, yeah.
It's because they were burned so bad or it was a knee-jerk reaction from 10 years ago that they still can't understand that. I mean, listen, I respect it because, look, at the end of the day, you have to protect the lender. The lender has the most to lose. They're lending the largest piece of the transaction, right? So I get all that, but there's also common sense where, and obviously common sense doesn't apply to our industry by any means, right? If it did, we wouldn't be on the podcast educating people today. I would have much more hair by 32. I'd probably have 2 more kids because I wouldn't be so stressed out for the past 8 years. But if you have a vision, if you have a foresight of what's going on in the market, and you strictly apply the rules of supply and demand, there's no way somebody can't tell me that this house sold for $500,000 today, and there's only one other house on the market that they shouldn't be entitled to a higher price. And you could use eBay as an example. eBay supply and demand. The more rare of an item you sell, the more the price could potentially go up. So at what point does the market say, we understand supply and demand, we know based on today's market trends, data, inflation, census, that this house is actually worth, it's going to set the record sale, and we're going to be able to support that valuation?
It gets dicey, but the appraiser's supposed to analyze and ever report market conditions. And when he does that,
Booming. Right.
Yeah.
and he's supposed to take all those factors into consideration, supply and demand. Or is it going through a trend of increasing values? And that it can be the opposite too, is demand exceeds supply. One thing you have to keep in mind is cost doesn't always equal value.
Ever.
And so and we have emotional parties, a seller and a buyer,
Sure. Who have no knowledge.
who have
Limited
knowledge.
knowledge.
And, know this house is the one they want as a buyer, knows the seller knows that they want X amount of dollars, and they meet in the minds, but yet the appraiser can't find that
Well,
on paper.
people have to consider the fact, like, the way the appraiser is looking at it, the way the bank is looking at it is not that you agree to the sale price. If you die tomorrow and they have to go sell this property,
What's our loss? Potential loss.
or
Right.
what can I get a second person to pay
Sure.
for this property?
Sure.
And if they can't validate that, then
Not happening, especially at max FHA financing.
right.
Correct.
Because at the end of the day, once you move in, it's like a car. Like you're already automatically at a loss once you hire a realtor. You're
Yeah,
putting
absolutely.
3.5% down, but
Sure.
you're hiring a realtor for 5%. You die tomorrow, you're negative 1.5 off the top.
Yep.
So what always intrigued me about appraisals in general, when I really got into commercial lending and investment lending, advisory, Residential does not speak to commercial at all, right? I'll give you an example. There's a three family property, compare apples to apples, right? A three family, based on comps, this house is worth 550,000. Well, based on my cash flow, it's worth 340. Well, what do you mean? I'm like, well, we analyze cash flow on investment, commercial appraisals, and we analyze most recent sales, not factoring in rent to any capacity to obviously a valuation standpoint. Do you think there will ever be a hybrid that's kind of the norm to the market? I know you have the sales approach and the cost approach and all that, income approach, but at what point do residential lenders smarten up and say, this price is overinflated because if we need to sell this house, an investor may buy it and they'll only pay X price for it?
I think that has a lot to do with the loan programs.
Right.
And, because right now the agencies,
They have no idea.
yeah.
No idea.
And it's
They're
just
still underwriting like it's 1982.
sort of, with a lot more rules.
Right.
Now
Right.
after the bill. But yeah, that's it. They just move on. You get the value. They have reps and warrants on the value from Fannie. Move it through.
So they really don't care about the
I don't
exit.
think no.
But I look at it as, look, I always say residential's emotional, commercial investments business, black and white versus tons of gray or red, if you will, because usually people see red when they get emotional. Do you think it'd be beneficial to lenders to underwrite a deal from an investment standpoint rather than just a valuation
they do that
standpoint?
to some degree, like in the hard money space.
Oh, of course, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm huge in
So-
that space, yeah.
So I think there is some of that, and that's where they do have more freedom to underwrite the way they
Sure.
want to, not necessarily the way the GSEs tell them
Sure.
to. But truthfully, it's like the underwriting follows the market and what's going on with it. And I don't think until there's a significant population of people doing real estate investing on the residential side, will the standards really change? 'Cause
I mean,
right now-
I could tell you for a fact, if I've done 600 or 700 FHA deals in my career on multifamilies alone in New York City, Northern New Jersey marketplace, maybe one or two passed my cash flow analysis. And that's scary. To me, that's scary, especially in an environment where rates are locked in for a 30-year period under 5%. Because, I always look at it as, well, on a commercial mortgage, well, what if rates adjust and now your rate goes up 5 points or whatever the case might be? If these people ever have to refinance or someone has to then go and sell 2, 3, 4, 5 years down the road, yeah, they might sell it for $500,000 more, but that new buyer is taking on what could be a potentially negative cash flow.
Right. If the lenders had to take into account the costs if they have to take back the property on,
Sure.
on a mortgage,
Sure.
it would cause a lot less mortgages to be done.
Crazy.
So that's why we don't want to blend those.
Keep
Right.
that- keep that
Right.
to yourself.
So you don't really want to blend those two.
I don't think so.
Yeah.
I,
It would it would halt business.
I would think so.
Well,
Because the cost to foreclose, I know, is pretty
Through the roof.
expensive.
Yep.
While they hold the property and hire the lawyers and go through all that at 50,000 or more.
Sure.
The
from what
amount
I've
of
been told.
change that would need, that would facilitate that, from the appraisers just being retrained. I mean, I look at it this way, you don't want a podiatrist doing your heart surgery,
Ever.
right?
Right.
And,
Ever.
a standard residential appraiser doesn't it's not that they're not intelligent enough, they just in practice don't do the same things that commercial appraisers do. And that would just take a total restructuring of not only their training,
But from an economic standpoint, it makes sense to protect the market.
yeah,
Yeah,
I'm not saying it's wrong.
Right.
I don't know how you execute that.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah, but I think they wouldn't have many 80% LTV loans
At
anymore,
all.
So,
At all.
and the 97, like
Gone.
you said, would, so
Interesting.
that's part of it.
So in your 40 years of experience, what's been, I guess, the two toughest times for you in the appraisal world?
The late 80s and the mid 90s, 95,
Legit,
96.
definitely. And what
Yeah.
caused that, you think?
The
Was
two
this-
market collapses of the time. I was a commercial appraiser.
Oh, so you really got it.
So when,
Yeah.
during all the commercial banks closed down
Yep,
after
yep.
in the late 80s,
Yep.
90s, and that was tough. Things were booming. In the early 90s, again, the market came back. Everything's going great. Then we hit 97. Here we are today, still
So
recovering.
being in the game 40 years, what's kept you in the game, and where do you see the market heading from here based on your experience?
Being sick kept me in the market, I think.
Serious.
It's-
In the head,
yeah,
mentally.
sick in the
Yeah.
head, yeah.
You like torturing yourself and everything else. Yeah.
Exactly.
How much more pain can I endure and not jump off the
Bit
bridge?
of a sadist.
It's been a crazy market, a crazy ride, but I love what I do now.
Right.
And because I do I do oversight, I deal with reviewers, I deal with appraisers in the field, I deal with lenders.
So you're evolving,
Yeah,
essentially.
I get to put all my experiences together and discuss it, and with whatever party that I'm dealing with at
So
the time.
CVO, that's the first time I've ever heard that title, Chief Valuation Officer. How'd you get that?
Ask Andy.
So he made it up.
Yeah, it's a common term among chief appraisers,
Understood.
or it's just a different level. Yeah,
It also kind of signals changes that are taking place right now. A lot of companies in our space aren't just limiting themselves as appraisal management companies or valuation companies, and that's because it's not all about appraisals anymore. There's other valuation types out there, and I think this is our way of not putting him into one bucket. He's not just about appraisals. He's
Yep.
about all types of
Yep,
valuations.
yep. Interesting.
Yeah.
So as you heard earlier, we leave the listeners with one thing to deposit into their brain and implement. And, people really like that because the main goal, don't listen to the hour show and walk away with 50 things. No one's going to implement 50 things. In both of your gentlemen's opinion, what's one thing you would leave somebody with after hearing you guys speak or based on your experience in the business? Each. So you can go first, whoever.
I think it goes back to our mantra, which is, treat yourself like a customer. And I think everybody in this industry needs to recognize that we're all each other's customers. We need to work collectively. We need to work together, because at the end of the day, we might do 20,000 transactions in a month. Every one of those is a borrower who cares about a home that they're trying to get financed, they're trying to purchase, whatever the case may be. And we need to put ourselves in their shoes every single time, because it's not just a transaction. It's a loan, it's a house, it's a person.
So every deal is
A
treated like a client rather
Yeah.
than a number.
my advice.
Move to California.
No,
I think it'd be the opposite. I think he'd tell you
I'll
to do
leave
the
that alone.
opposite.
We got too many people there. Or at least don't move to Southern California. It's a lot of Central. Anyways, if the appraisal doesn't come in, it's not end all. There are remedies we can work, or the lender can work through to help out and potentially remedy that situation. But the real point I want to make is when that appraisal comes in and you get it, don't call the appraiser. The realtor shouldn't call the appraiser. The seller or the buyer shouldn't call the appraiser. They should contact the lender they're working with,
And the appraisal management company.
who will then contact
Yep.
the appraisal
Yep.
management company, and we will go to bat with you any way we can to provide the most reliable report available, the most.
So follow the hierarchy, if you will,
Correct.
the system in place.
Don't call the appraiser, because there's first off appraisal independence rules that may come into play, and the appraiser's going to be less open-minded if we go through the normal process.
Right. Well, you're pushing somebody
I mean,
opposed
if you
to
don't go through it.
massaging it
Leading
through.
them. Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So
Well, I really appreciate your gentlemen's knowledge, wisdom. We'll get all you guys' information and whatnot. And, look, you heard what I said earlier. Nationwide's been nothing but excellent to me for, my entire career. And, now, like I said, I'm on the hard money investment side. I look forward to continue that relationship and hopefully continuing our dialogue, how we can make the appraisal process more consumer friendly, more service provider educational, if you will. And look forward to growing with you guys. So thanks for coming.
Appreciate the
I
partnership.
appreciate it.
thank you.
Absolutely. Thanks, Jeff.